You're listening to the G-Man Interviews, and our guest for this installment is Katherine Nadeau, Water and Natural Resources Program Director for Environmental Advocates of New York. And she joins us to discuss fracking. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Nadeau.
Thank you so much, Gary.
I'd like you to give my listeners an overview of your background as an environmental advocate and how your interests developed.
I got involved in advocacy when I was in college. I got involved with an organization called the New York Public Interest Research Group, or NYPIRG, which is on college campuses throughout New York State and works with young people to develop their social awareness and their advocacy skills so that, once folks go out into the world, they can not only make their place, but make the world a better place. So that's where I really got interested. From there, I just kind of kept taking jobs that allowed me to work on public interest issues and with a very strong bent towards the environment. And then in 2007, came to Albany to work for Environmental Advocates of New York, focusing on water policy and specifically on statewide water policy, which is just a dream come true for me. So it's a great gig.
Fracking has become a very hotly contested issue here in the state of New York. Now, so for those who may not be aware, what exactly is fracking and why are you and so many others against it?
Fracking is short for high volume hydraulic fracturing, and it's a process for getting natural gas or oil, but in New York State, natural gas, out of deep rock layers that are thousands of feet below the earth. And the concerns around fracking basically come down to a number of things. First of all, the science just isn't in. This is a process that's a couple of decades old, and we don't have a lot of data out there to show that this will be safe. However, from what we have seen, because there is fracking all over the country and right next door in Pennsylvania, wherever fracking goes, devastation and environmental damage follows. When a well is drilled, it takes an enormous land-based operation. It involves very toxic chemicals and lots of water, which has impacts on our water resources, and also has a big industrial footprint on the land. So for all of these reasons kind of come together and give New Yorkers statewide a lot of concern about allowing fracking in our state.
Is there one specific case that you could cite that's a clear indication that fracking poses a serious threat to the environment and public health?
Well, fracking hasn't started here in New York yet. High-volume hydraulic fracturing hasn't, because back in 2008, when this process was first being kind of rolled out for New York, we put a timeout in place and said, okay, the state of New York said that they are going to study this issue and try to better understand the environmental implications and community implications, and then also to try and put some measures in place to mitigate those or to make the impacts not as severe. And so that has been going on for a couple of years now as the state studies this and as it works to get these measures in place. So I'm happy to say that at this point I don't have any disasters in New York to point to. But we can look right across the border into Pennsylvania, where there have been a number of environmental problems since they swung open the doors to fracking a number of years ago. There has been instances of people's water wells becoming contaminated from toxic chemicals and from natural gas getting into the water so that people can't use the water that comes out of their tap in their own home. And if you think about it, that's terrifying. If you could tomorrow not trust your water, if suddenly you couldn't drink it, you couldn't wash your kids in it, you couldn't wash your clothes in it. And that's what's happened to people across the border in Pennsylvania. And that's exactly the type of thing we want to prevent from happening here in New York.
And in terms of preventing that from happening, have you met with Governor Cuomo or other elected officials to discuss this issue? And if so, what was their response?
We have been meeting with every elected official we can through the state level of government, so the governor's office as well as state legislators, and then over in the Department of Environmental Conservation as well. And basically at this point, what elected officials are looking at is, they don't want to ruin our water supplies either, but they're under tremendous pressure from the oil and gas industry which is a major industry, throwing millions of dollars around in lobbying and ad campaigns, and making all sorts of pie-in-the-sky promises about what this could do for our state. And so I think elected officials are feeling a squeeze, but the only way that they're going to prevent problems and do the right thing on fracking is if they continue to hear from their constituents. So all of your listeners who are concerned about fracking or want to prevent problems in New York, I would encourage them to call their senator, call their assemblyman, call the governor's office, and let those people know how they feel.
Given that the Obama administration has indicated that it intends to place greater emphasis on creating alternative energy sources, do you suspect fracking will become a major political issue in the weeks and months to come?
Absolutely. Fracking is already one of the biggest political issues, environmental political issues, to sweep the state in generations. And it's only going to become more intense. And I think that with the president shining a spotlight on natural gas production, it's going to ramp up people's understanding of not only what natural gas is and what we can do with it, but also the serious implications of drilling and fracking and what happens when fracking goes wrong.
And are there alternative methods that could be used to protect the environment and communities?
Certainly, there are a lot of alternative energy sources out there, but one of the easiest and best things that we can do is take the system that we already have and make it more efficient. I mean, as individuals, you can think back to probably, I don't know, if your mom was anything like mine, it was always put on a sweater, turn down the heat.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And,
very
we're
much
not
so.
in the outdoors. But that's one of the simplest things that we can do is make our own homes more energy efficient. And New York State has put a lot of effort into providing people with low interest loans and with good financing options to upgrade their homes so that we're not wasting the energy that we do have. Simple things individuals can do are, switch over to the compact fluorescent light bulbs, or CFLs as they're known. They use way less energy. So those are things that people can do. But then also on the statewide level, the state can be making better choices about where to spend money and how to upgrade our infrastructure so that we are getting every last drop of energy out of every bit produced. And again, just conserving better and being more efficient. And that will get us a very long way. After that, we can start looking at all our alternatives like solar and like wind. And natural gas is going to continue to be part of our energy mix. Well, we can find ways to ratchet down the amount that we use.
As you may know, New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg had endorsed President Obama for re-election. And the reason that he cited was because of the president's stance on climate change. Having said that, how much of an impact, if any, would fracking have on climate change?
We know that natural gas, when it burns cleaner than oil or coal and emits fewer greenhouse gases, which are the main drivers for climate change. However, if it's not controlled properly as we're getting it out of the ground, if it's not captured and if it's allowed to leak or vent off when it's being drilled, which happens a lot now, it's actually a far more potent greenhouse gas than even just carbon dioxide. There are costs and benefits to continuing to use natural gas and fracking for natural gas. And, if this is something that's going to become more of our energy mix, we have to be far more careful about how it is that we're using it and making sure that we're getting the greenhouse gas reductions that we're looking for. And then going back to what I was saying before, natural gas can't be the answer to all of our problems. It can't be used in a vacuum. We have to continue to put way more research and focus on developing these alternative energy sources.
Back in August of this year, CNN did Artists Against Fracking, which is on their CNN website. People can just Google it at Artists Against Fracking in the state of New York if you can pull up the article. Basically, what it talked about was the fact that there are a number of celebrities that have gotten involved in protesting fracking in the state of New York. For example, Yoko Ono, Sean Lennon, Anne Hathaway is another, and this year Senator Joseph Adabo Jr. was working with actor Mark Ruffalo on the issue. Ruffalo starred as the Hulk in the Avengers. So I'm wondering, is your organization currently working with any celebrities or plan to work with any celebrities, or have any celebrities reached out to you in the hopes of working with you and addressing this issue?
We've worked with Blythe Danner from Meet the Fockers and that line of movies, and she's got a whole body of work, but I think that might be one of the more recent ones that most people are familiar with. And she's a supportive of environmental advocates and has come out with strong concerns against fracking. And then, otherwise, I've had the opportunity to lobby with Mark Ruffalo up here in Albany to meet with legislators' offices and the governor's office on fracking. So it's fantastic that we have so many big name celebrities really taking a hard look at this issue and really weighing in, because when you get somebody with the name recognition and caliber of Yoko Ono and Sean Lennon and Mark Ruffalo paying attention and weighing in, you know that has a huge effect, because they've got an entire circle of people that reach out to them as well. So it just helps get the message that much further. And I'm really thankful that all of these people have gotten involved.
In closing, the Obama administration is dealing with a number of issues, ranging from the turmoil in the Middle East to the economy to climate change. Now, for those who would say fracking isn't quote-unquote a priority issue or something that should be viewed as important as the issues that I just mentioned, what would you say to them?
We have to consider fracking first and foremost, especially in the state of New York, when we're looking at what do we want for our water long-term, what do we want for our families long-term, and what do we want, just for the future of our state. Fracking carries with it a tremendous amount of risk. It would involve industrializing large parts of rural upstate New York and thousands and thousands of truck trips. It comes with it millions of barrels of toxic chemicals and all sorts of community impacts for the people who live near these wells, along with the threat of just contaminating our water. Is that something we want? Is that the legacy that we want to leave our children? For people in New York City who would rely on gas that's fracked from upstate, to what level is the city water supply going to be very carefully? Because New York's in a unique position. We haven't allowed fracking yet. We haven't opened this door yet. But once we do, that's going to open an entire Pandora's box. And we've got to make sure that we've thought this through and that we can protect our people, our communities, our water before we allow this to go forward, if we allow this to go forward.
Okay, and with that said, that's going to bring this edition of the G-Men Interviews to a close. I'd like to thank my guest, Ms. Katherine Nadeau, Water and Natural Resources Program Director for the Environmental Advocates of New York. And for those of you out there that are interested in learning more about her organization, a link will be posted below in the article so you can contact them. Once again, you've been listening to the G-Man Interviews. Until next time, stay cool, stay safe, and stay informed.